Hello crafty friends, I'm Lean from Studio Kato and I'm so happy to be back with another card today. Today I am sharing a monochromatic card design using all Pinkfresh Studio products, which I don't get to use that often. So I had a lot of fun with this week. I made this card over a couple of days, took my time with it, did some relaxing, and it was exactly what I needed. So I'm using this older stamp set from Pinkfresh Studio called Nothing But the Best. I love the ginormous floral, but I am going to cut this down myself. So I'm going to color it and then cut it apart into different flower sections. So don't forget you can do that with your large florals and it gives them a whole new life. So I put this large floral stamp in my MISTI and I'm going to stamp it with the Altenew Fresh Dye ink in the color Arctic Mountain. This ink stamps beautifully, and more importantly for my card here, it is exactly the right color I needed, so I am going to double stamp it. That is going to intensify the color a little bit, but I don't mind that. A darker blue is perfect for the line work on this one. And then I'm going to start coloring this. But why I wanted to use the Altenew inks in particular here is because I am going to do some better press later on, and I have found that from all the dye inks in my stash, the Altenew inks are just easiest to better press with. In theory, yes, you can better press with any ink. I have had a lot less issues with the Altenew Fresh Dye ink than any of my other dye inks, so just putting that out there. I'm coloring these flowers with my Ohuhu alcohol markers. I am a big fan of these markers, and every time I see an artist do a comparison video these days of all the alcohol markers, these always come out, if not on top, very, very near the top, and they have such a low price point. So if you haven't tried these markers yet and you want to get into marker coloring, I highly recommend these. Ohuhu has a lot of sales frequently. I don't know if they have one currently going on, but I'm sure they'll do a Black Friday sale. I'm like 80% sure. I don't know. But there is a link below for you to check them out. I really, really like these markers. And as you can see, they blend beautifully. I have never tried Copics, so I'm not going to compare them to them, but I really like the nibs on these. I love the color range, and they are really easy to color with, so I like them. I did struggle with this coloring because it has been about a year, I think, since I've done coloring this involved. So it was a lot of trial and error. This was my second try at coloring this floral, but it worked out in the end. And it did help that I went for a monochromatic card design here, so I could color everything in the same color combination. I'm not going to show you the rest of it because it was all the same, going from dark to light. Let's get into better pressing. So this is probably one of my favorite better press plates of all time. This is one from Pinkfresh Studio. It's called Fairytale Frame, and it is just a really nice floral frame all the way around an A2 size card. It is actually a tiny bit larger than A2 size. So I am going to, that is why I'm not attaching this piece of cotton cardstock immediately to my clear plate for the better press. I'm just making sure it covers the better press plate on the other side first and picking it up that way. Sometimes that's easier if you're working with any size that is not marked on that clear plate. And then I'm going to ink this up with the Altenew Fresh Dye ink Arctic Mountain. Again, I love these inks for better pressing. I don't know what's different in their formulation, but they definitely don't bead up as much on the press plates as other dye inks tend to do. Maybe that's just a personal thing. Maybe for you, you love the Pinkfresh inks for better pressing. I've definitely seen a lot of people use those as well, so it's not impossible. This is just my personal preference. For my sentiment, I again went through my Pinkfresh Studio stash because I don't get to use it often enough, and I went for the Delicate Foliage stamp and die set, and I'm going to heat emboss this onto some Altenew brushed gold cardstock. This is such a stunning gold cardstock. It is a little yellow. Usually I go for more of a rose tinted gold, even if it's not actual rose gold. It's a lot less yellow that I usually go for, but this just works really nicely. So yeah, I'm going to stamp the sentiment twice with VersaMark ink, so it's definitely stamped well. And then I'm going to sprinkle some Wow Bright White Superfine Embossing Powder over that. Now, any mirror cardstock or specialty cardstock, if you want to emboss on it, just test it out first, because they all behave a little bit differently. Usually they're a little bit more finicky than regular cardstock, so I do heat it from the back and from the front and try to not have it curl up as much, but it still curled up quite a bit. It didn't matter that much because I was going to die cut the sentiment anyway, so I wasn't too fussy with it. As long as the cardstock doesn't do anything too crazy, if it just curls up, you can always flatten that out by just putting it under some heavy books or piles of cardstock, I guess. So yeah, I don't usually worry too much about that kind of buckling. I have glued this on top of one, maybe two layers of white cardstock as well. So this is very sturdy. And then I am going to pull in these fairly new dotted fancy frames from Pinkfresh Studio. I really, really love this. You know, I love a good frame die. I can never resist them because I feel like a frame pulls every card together. Even if you're struggling with your design, put a frame on top of it and it'll probably work out in the end. So I collect frame dies like no one's business. It's insane the amount of frame dies I have. So I die cut that dotted fancy frame as well from a gold glitter cardstock, and there are also 2 layers of white cardstock behind that. Not only because I like the added dimension, for such a tiny and delicate frame, it's just so much easier to handle and arrange it on your card if it's a little bit more sturdy. These frames, probably because of the shape of it, because it's so curvy, they are very, very delicate and they bend out of shape really quickly. So it just helps a lot for me personally to just layer up the cardstock. I don't mind die cutting it a couple of times. It doesn't take that much extra time, and gluing them together is usually fairly easy too. Now, as you can see, I have cut this flower apart, which yes, it was terrifying, especially because this is the first time in probably a year since I've done coloring that I like this much, so it was a little scary to cut it apart. Usually I don't get that emotionally attached to my coloring or to any panels. I don't mind cutting them up, but this one was a little bit difficult for me. I managed it in the end. I cut one separate flower off of the large flower thing, and then there are 2 sprigs with tiny flowers on top of them. I cut those apart as well, and that just gives you more room to play with it. Like, I can overlap this flower with the frame while the other 2 are underneath the frame. You can play with dimension a little bit, and obviously with the arrangement of the flowers itself. So it gives you a lot more freedom, and I just cut it apart with scissors. Yes, it was scary, but again, it worked out in the end. And it's also just paper. And if you manage to ruin it, at least you got some coloring practice in. And that's nothing to scoff at either. So yeah. For the sentiment, I'm going to put some foam tape behind it. I put foam tape behind a lot of these flowers. Not all of them, just where I wanted some extra dimension or stability. And once I'm happy with the arrangement, I'm going to stick that down in place as well. I am going to tuck it in between some of the flowers. So some parts are going to be slightly covered with a tiny wisp of foliage or something. But I always make sure that my sentiment is definitely still legible. And once that's done, all that's left to do is add a couple of embellishments. Now this card is pretty busy, even though it's monochromatic. So I didn't add too many embellishments and they don't stand out that much. I made sure to stick with the Pinkfresh glitter drops because those matched my glitter frame perfectly. So that was nice. And it didn't add too much distraction to this card. So I really, really like how this turned out. I hope you like this card. I hope you like the video. I love this. I love this card so much. I had so much fun making it, and it's one of the cards that I'm most proud of that I created this year probably. I really like how it turned out. I hope you do too. Thank you so much for watching, and leave a comment to let me know what you think. Leave a like if you like the video. It definitely helps me out. And if you want to see more of those videos, it helps you out too, because if you interact with this one, YouTube will show you more of my channel. So yeah. Subscribe if you want to stay in touch. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.